Leadership ultimately comes down to creating conditions of trust within an organization. Good leaders are people who are trusted by followers.
Leadership is empowering others.
The art of example, the art of influencing others.
Leadership is realizing your own potential within inside yourself and seeing that come to fruit.
Leadership is not just getting people to follow you at all. It's about bringing people along and leaving a legacy that other people can continue on into the future.
I think that good leaders are the ones that see strengths within other people and drive those out and help them find a direction. And then those leaders that were empowered go on to do those to other leaders and then other leaders, and it's kind of this regenerative cycle.
A leader is when someone guides a group of people when they need help.
In a world that's constantly telling you how wrong you are, we want to tell you what's right with you. David McKnight is a counselor, speaker, and consultant who helps people discover how they're wired as a person. His concepts have revolutionized how people see themselves once they learn the principles behind what's right about you. Here now is David McKnight.
Today, David, I know we want to talk about leadership. Leaders come in all kinds of packages. They're small, they're tall, they're fat, they're thin. But I want to know a little bit more about leadership. And before I ask you a specific question, I found this quote the other day about leadership from John Quincy Adams. Maybe you've heard about it. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. What do you think about that?
I would agree with him. Leadership is about influence. Leadership, Peter Drucker said it very succinctly, leadership is about leading people and influencing people. If there's no one following you, then you're just out for a walk. We all seem to think we know a lot about it. It's written a lot about, but it's a misunderstood concept. We think of leaders as people who are in charge and people running the show, and those are aspects of leadership. But leadership, it's more than that. Leadership is managing the meaning between the spaces from here to there. And that is something that is not always thought of, but it's the thing that kind of fouls things up along the way.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because years ago, and you have a story that goes along with this, leaders were always at the top of the heap. But today, leaders, as you say, are managing the space between here and there. It's a different kind of leader, and everybody then really has the potential of being leader. But tell us the story when you were actually faced with what leadership was, and you realized it's not that at all.
I remember very succinctly sitting in a room full of people who on their business card had leadership on it. They were in charge of some aspect of thing. And that was a room full of about 20 people. And I was working as a consultant at the time, and I got this distinct gut sense that there wasn't any leadership in the room. And that kind of frightened me a little bit, and I realized how little I really understood about leadership. You know, I'd seen people who were in charge, who had roles like there was a minister, there's a principal of a school, there's a teacher, there is the president of a college. These are the things that were in my world, so I saw those as leaders and never really thought much about what is a leader, what's their makeup. But then I began as a consultant looking at this idea that there's something right about everybody, that there's a design inherent in each person. And so what I observed in that room was the sense that people were leading outside of themselves. They were leading from a model that didn't match up with who they were, and that's what I observed in that room that day.
Well, okay, so let's get down to pay dirt. What is a leader then? What is a leader in your estimation?
Well, like I said, a leader is someone who gets us from point A to point B. And I say that because oftentimes leaders just take us in circles, and that isn't good leadership. So it's someone that moves us forward, someone who, as I said, manages the meaning between here and there. I became very much aware that there was this thing called transactional leadership and transformational leadership. And transactional leadership is what I was most familiar with. That says, if you do this, I will do this for you. If you do this, I'll give you this. And so at the end of the day, what we still have a leader and a follower. And transformational leadership is a desire to grow leadership. So transformational leadership says at the end of the day, I've created a new leader. And that's what I really look for in a leader, is someone who is creating new leaders, letting those people expand on who they are and what their gifts are, and putting them in a position to win.
So let me ask you another question then. Do good leaders clarify what leadership is, or do they just plain do it?
Well, I think there are those people who they are and the context they find themselves in is like a hand in glove. Do they know who they are and they're actually leading? I think there are some people who would be surprised if you told them that they were leading, because their design, how they are made up, and the context in which they find themselves match up so succinctly that it looks effortless. See, I think there's three elements to leadership. The first is obviously a leader, a person designated that. Then you have a follower, someone who is taking the direction of the leader, and then you have the context. Those three elements make up leadership. And so I always say to leaders that I'm working with, you have two questions to ask. What's really going on here, and what do I need to do about it? And so what's the context? What's my role in it? And what do I need to do? Do I need to enter in and take control of this situation? Or is there someone within my followership that can do it better than I can? Or how do I delegate this out? And that's why I think it's so important to understand your own design, because you may be in a leadership position, but your inclination is to work as an individual and get the job done with your own hands. So I want leaders to understand, how far do you go out and where do you end and where do other people come in? And sometimes people have pretty short hands, pretty short arms, because they're trying to be involved in every aspect of what's going on. And that oftentimes just cuts people off at the knees. I have been seen so many times where leaders have delegated a project out, or something has been given them to do, and they don't like the way it looks, and so they come in and do it themselves. Well, okay, one time, maybe 2 or 3 times, you're going to lose your followers. So I think it's imperative that leaders really know how they operate best and in what context they do their best work. And so they look for those opportunities within that context to shine and give others who are following them the opportunity to do their job. See, followers have an interesting role in this leadership thing. Followers give leaders permission to lead. Followers can cut leaders off at the knees real quickly if leaders don't understand the relationship between the two. And the relationship really is a key component of leadership.
David, doesn't motivation enter into all of this? Because if someone is not motivated to really be concerned about an issue or a group or the company or the ministry, whatever the context is, don't they first have to have a motive that says, I want to move this thing forward, however that looks and however we can do it?
Well, this is interesting. My wife was in law school many years ago, and she said to me, one of her classmates turned to her, I think this person was in the legislature and going to law school, and he said to her, the world is run by those who show up, by those who are motivated. And so for us to sit back and complain about what's going on, well, we didn't show up. So that's why we have people who are in leadership, maybe are doing things differently than we would do it, but they had the audacity to take the risk to show up and express themselves. So I say everybody has the capacity to be a leader. They have it in the context in which they can shine will someday come along, and they need to be prepared for that. So as a leader of people who I am in charge of or caring for, I want to put people in a position to win and understand when their leadership will shine.
But you say that leadership is a relationship. What do you mean by that?
A leader needs to make an emotional connection with followers. And so the whole sense about understanding that you are designed uniquely, everybody else, they too are designed. So to make that emotional connection as a parent is a leader, needs to make an emotional connection with their children, not just say, you're going to do this because, but to understand the child and speak to the child in a way that the child knows you get who they are. You've made an emotional connection. That's why you see people who have led, who give speeches, and they can talk in a way that makes an emotional connection with the audience, and the audience is ready to go. Now, it's a unique gift, really, but it's one that I think everybody needs to be mindful of. Too often we take the rank that we are given and assume a leadership posture when in fact we really haven't looked at how we ourselves are actually going to lead. And what does leadership call for in this situation? I was working with a young leader a couple weeks ago, newly in a position. She found herself in this position of leadership where she had pretty much been up to that point in a role where she was a hands-on thing and she was to go get the job done. And she had people working for her, but she really kind of needed to be hands-on. And now she was put in a position, a much higher rank, where she had various fields to be responsible for. And she was kind of wondering, well, what do I do? And I said, first thing you need to do is leadership is about your presence, just your presence. You don't even have to say anything. It's your presence in the room. It's your presence in the building. It's your presence with that person will say and do an awful lot. And leaders often forget that. They don't show up. They hide in their office or they're gone and they don't communicate or connect. They don't make that emotional connection. Most people are followers. They operate individually. Give me a job to do, give me the parameters, and I will do it. That's the biggest part of our population. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for someone who will either collaborate with them, point them in the right direction, or literally be side by side with them. So you need to understand the people who you are in charge of and how they best operate. Some people want to know, we're going to go west, just tell me where, I'll beat you there, and I won't need any help. And others want you to walk with them the whole way. So it's understanding the context, and that's a big component of leadership. I've read hundreds of leadership definitions, and they get real complicated. But truly, it's just about taking people from one place to another, having an agreed-upon vision and mission, and going from A to B.
Okay, so most leaders today oftentimes are asking the wrong question. In other words, the emphasis isn't really on the real questions people are asking. So when we talk about leadership and the right question, what are we talking about?
Well, now this is something I got from reading the Bible, and I realized God started asking questions right away. And Jesus, he asked a lot of questions. So I figured questions must really be important. And so at that time, I started collecting questions. I've got a whole 3-ring binder full of questions because I realized I need to ask the right question as a consultant going into a situation and as leaders who are trying to solve problems and make decisions and think critically. The right question is very important. And so giving time to the questioning process in a problem-solving, decision-making thing and critical thinking is vitally important. And critical thinking is something that we've kind of lost that art. I don't know why, but critical thinking, we just kind of rush to judgment and not think things through, not think about the questions. I have had many situations that I've been involved in where I have just stopped and really tried to think through what's the right question that this person probably is asking. And so if I get it out there ahead of time and ask that question, I'll simply make an emotional connection. How did he know that? How did he know I was thinking that? So I want to be thinking about the questions the people I'm working with might be asking before they have to ask me. I want to ask them. I want to have the question out there. And there's been situations where the right question moved a problem or a project, something 6-7 months, just advanced it right away because we asked the right question.
So how does one prepare for the right question? I mean, I hear what you're saying, and you're absolutely correct. By asking the right question, you're on the right emphasis. But how do you get to that point of asking that kind of a question?
Don't assume you have all the answers. There's a certain amount of humility to being a leader and recognizing that people in the room, people working with me, they may have better information, better knowledge. And so I want to hear what they're thinking. So some humility is a big part of being able to ask the right question. Because if I've got pride and I think I have to have all the answers, I'm not going to ask those questions that might give me information where I can then ask the question to move us forward.
There is a concept in many leadership manuals and training about transformational leadership. Now, in your estimation, what is that?
Well, I think it's something that we're not too familiar with. Much of the way the world is run is done transactionally. You know, we buy a house, we buy a car, it's a transaction. So we take that same concept, I do this and you will do that. I'll pay you this and you'll do this. You know, I go to work in one company, and a lot of the people I work with, they're on an hourly basis, and they're working hard, and they're doing what they're agreed upon to do. If they do this, they'll get paid this. And there's something that's missing in that for them, and that's the meaning in their work. That's why am I here? And so a transformational leader takes more into the equation of what we're doing here than just getting X product done or X project done or shipping out the right thing. It's realizing that these are people, so I want to raise them up. So at the end of the day, with a transformational leader, he's raising or she is raising up leaders and not leaving them in that follower state, giving them the hope and helping them understand the meaning that they're a part of, what they can be a part of, see the bigger picture, and move everybody forward.
The whole idea of what's right about you, David, is about how we're created, how we're put together, what's our DNA like. So when you talk about leadership and what's right about you as we draw this time together to a close, how would you give a summary to what's right about you is kind of found in what you do in a leadership position, whether it's in your family, in your business, in your church, in your neighborhood, whatever. Talk to us a little bit about what's right about you and leadership right now, where you're at and what you're doing.
We kind of have to stop and realize, well, what roles am I playing? And I realize throughout the day, I may play 5 or 6 different roles. Some of them may call for me to actually step in and lead. Some may be where I am kind of coaching or helping somebody along in their own leadership. As a father, I realize that there's a leadership aspect to what I say, but it's also a leadership aspect to my presence. So those two pieces are very much a part, I think, of leadership. So whether it's in the home, in a business, wherever you might find yourself, what context you're in, your presence and what you say are vitally important, and to understand the two. I mean, I have had situations where I'm kind of surprised that someone is taking my leadership because I didn't say anything, but it was just my presence there that led them to come to a conclusion for themselves that they needed to do the right thing. See, I think everybody does have a design inside of them, and it's looking for ways to express itself. And if we don't understand what that design is, it will express itself maybe at the wrong time, in the wrong place, and that's generally where we get mixed up or confused or we get off the rails. So to know what my design is and to understand the context and what I find myself in, and to work towards bringing those two together usually makes followers ready and eager to follow.
David, what I'm hearing you say, which has been very helpful to me, is the fact that leadership really comes out of what's right about you. And so often people are not really aware of what's right about them. And so their leadership sort of takes, sort of all over the map kind of way. Now, you have a story about somebody you're working with that kind of illustrates.
I've got a gentleman who's an executive director of a nonprofit group, and he just isn't self-aware. He just isn't aware of the way he creates when he does his stuff. The people that are falling by the wayside, at the end of the day, he's been busy, thinks he's done a great job, but yet there's people wounded and bandaged up along the side of the road. And he doesn't see it, he doesn't understand it. So trying to help him understand that, help his board to be patient, all those things. There's so many tools to help people understand who they are, to help them get a clue as to the design they have. I've literally had clients who saw the design that they were given and who they were and cried because they didn't want that design. They wanted a different one. Well, that's what you've got, and it's there for a purpose and a reason. And so embrace it. See how you can then enter into life with that. And it's kind of sad when people choose not to look critically at themselves and the work that's being done at their fingertips and how it does impact the larger effort that people are involved in.
So people who are listening to this, they're kind of wondering, well, what kind of leader am I? And what kind of results am I leaving in my wake?
Yeah.
You actually hold seminars about what's right about you, because I think you've got to get that down first. That's the foundation.
That's very foundational.
How you are created, what's right about you will determine the kind of leader or what kind of leadership that comes out from you. What do you offer people, leaders, presidents of companies, pastors, whatever they are? What kind of resources do you offer for them?
First and foremost, I want to help them get an understanding of there's a theme to their life. There's a theme to what they do. And we can get that down in 2 or 3 sentences that says, whenever you wake up in the morning, this is what you're driving at by the end of the day. This is what you want to get done. This is how you want to do it. Some people are about process. Some people are about direct results. Some people are about the relationship. Some people want to be key to what's going on. There's various different themes that people can have in their life, and that's what they're going to drive things to. And then they have abilities that I say are motivated abilities versus can do. I can do this, but a motivated one is one I want to do over and over and over again. A can-do ability is I can do it for a period of time. In essence, if I have to, it will drain me of my energy. Then there's subjects that we want to be involved with. There's people who want to be involved with tangible things versus intangible things. I was working with a client who was a life insurance salesman, and he was telling me about a guy who came into the business, and he was a Mercedes salesman. And so I said, he's going to have trouble, I think, because he's selling an intangible, where once he sold a very tangible object that sat in someone's driveway, and he was polishing it all the time. And so there's a different subject matters that we like to work with, tangible, intangible. People think money. Well, money is rarely a subject. It's the thing behind the money that motivates people. Then there are circumstances that get us excited, get us motivated. What gets us out of bed on Monday morning? What keeps us going? What results do we want to get after? These are all things I try to help a leader understand about who they are and what they do. And then how they work best with people. How do they want to be managed, and how will they manage others? Those are things that when you get clarity for, you can really see why this is working and that just didn't work at all. And so it begins to make the flow of work much more pointed, much more directional, and you're not kind of hoping you're getting the right thing done, but you're using your best stuff in the context that it's needed, and it comes off to the people around you as authentic. You're an authentic leader. You're not out there faking it.
If you would like to know more about what you've heard today, you can contact David McKnight by calling 612-990-6604. Again, that number is 612-990-6604.